Well, it's the Luskos. Oh, surprised you. You thought I was going to say, hey, it's the Luskos.
Well, it's the Luskos.
Well, renamed podcast.
It could go, well, it's the Luskos, or, well, it's the Luskos. Like,
well, it's the Luskos.
Sad or happy.
Like it's a question. Well, it's the Luskos.
Luskos?
What do we have here? Jennie, we have a very big podcast today.
Yeah.
And by big, I mean...
B-I-G.
Double G-er. Bigger. It's like Tigger, but it's bigger. It is, first of all, a fabulous day in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It's a fabulous day in the neighborhood. It's better than beautiful because the day we're recording this, it is 90 degrees in Montana. It's the perfect day to find a lake and jump into it. That's what I want to do when it's 90. I want to find a lake. That's the first step. Jump into it. That's the second step.
What if it was a river?
I like jumping into rivers. You just want to be careful because, rivers have unpredictable currents and you could be swept out. Even if it looks calm, there could be an eddy effect going on. Rivers are unusual because there could be something below the surface you don't know about. You really got to be careful.
You got to be with the right people who know.
Right people who know, and always respect the power of a river. Because even if it doesn't look like it's going to be dangerous, it could be.
Well, it's like we were floating. Well, actually, I was floating in a boat where someone was guiding and you were in a kayak fending for your life. And there was this one part that was called like the deadliest part of the river, but it looked so like unassuming. Like it didn't look like...
If we were dropped there from a helicopter and asked to pick the most dangerous part of the river, we never would have picked that part.
Exactly. And people have died on that part.
Multiple people.
But it didn't look like a huge like Niagara Falls waterfall, which in my mind would be a deadliest thing, which I'm sure is also. But it was this part that was just like, it was a smooth part of a stone and water just like went over it super fast. But then
we
would never have known. Yeah, you can get sucked into it. Anyways, like you would just never know.
You don't know about that is responsible for the power, positive or negative.
Yeah.
And that's like a sermon in and of itself.
Yeah.
What's below the surface in your life? The river effect. Rated R. Coming soon.
But also PG.
Rated PG.
Also G, just in case kids are listening.
Wait, what? Wait, you have to draw a line somewhere. Rated Y. It's like, I hate how the TV ratings are different. Can't they just get on the movie page? We've all got conditioned to
like
G,
Youth
PG.
14.
Yeah, I hate it.
Or Youth
TV
9.
M. TV Y79K. YKK zipper. I feel like they need to really just get together and be like, hey, look, it's something people are going to watch on a screen. Let's just rate it. Because now, the lines have been blurred. What movies are you seeing in movie theaters? So they're releasing movies direct to TV anyway. So why can't they just... It's a quandary. It is an enigma wrapped in a riddle, eaten with bacon.
That sounds wonderful.
Honestly, I've worked up an appetite just describing it. Okay, so thanks for listening, everybody. We also are super excited about the new Access More app that is out that you can get to download Hey It's Luskos and all the other content that the beautiful folks at K-Love have put together through this Access More platform. So check it out. You can get it wherever apps are downloaded. And thank you to those of you who have shared this episode. When you share a clip or something from it, podcast, this episode, anything you want to share is great. Unless you hate it, in which case,
don't share it.
Keep it to yourself. Don't be giving your 1-star reviews. Just go listen to something different, all right?
Oh, that's a good point.
I don't know. Do it.
Don't share the hate.
Unless you're
share the love.
Maybe they're warning people to stay away. I don't even know if we've gotten a 1-star review.
I don't know if we've gotten any reviews.
Need to check into that. No, we've gotten lots of reviews. I've read them all.
Oh.
Yeah, that's all I do. When you go to sleep, bang. Review time. That's like...
Good night, Jennie.
Good night, Jennie. It's review time. No, but I have read them. The kind words mean a lot. If you've tagged us on Instagram in a post recommending this podcast, it has meant a lot, and it does help. So please do it and continue to listen, and we'll continue to generate, and we'll be like a little family. That was a big yawn.
I'm so sorry. I tried to yawn away from the
Don't
microphone.
be sorry. Never apologize.
You,
I shamed you.
Yes.
Yawn shame. That's the power of being married. When someone yawns publicly, never draw attention to it, unless it's your wife. It's like, when you're dating, it's like, it's like, no. And then you're married and you're like, great yawn. You must be tired. Ooga. Like, it's just the most ridiculous soundtrack.
Oh my God.
Okay, so today on the podcast, we have an extreme privilege.
We really do.
When I say that, double yawn, it's like a double rainbow.
I need a coffee.
Yeah, right?
Or to do some 20 jumping jacks.
Or take a nap. Don't fight it with stimulants.
But what if I can't take a nap?
Embrace it. You can. You can always take a nap.
Oh.
Even if it's just in your heart.
Oh, a heart nap.
You said that with so much disappointment. It's the worst kind of nap. Because it doesn't even exist. You just pretend you're napping for a quick second. What's Fred doing? He looks so weird. He's just napping in his heart. Jennie, wake up. No, I'm asleep. I'm awake. But what's your heart doing? Sleeping.
So then you might as well just take a nap. Why take a heart nap when you can take a real nap?
Yeah, just do it. Just go ahead and give in to your baser instincts.
Oh, I love when you laugh till you cry. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world.
I feel like that's the only good cry I've ever had. Like a lot of people say, I just had a good cry. I needed a good cry. I only have a good cry if it's a laugh cry.
And you know what?
Is there a name for a laugh cry? That's what I want to know. Like, there should be a name for that. Like if you fall asleep and jerk your leg, like there's a name for that. Like you're jerking your leg when you're falling asleep. Mm-hmm. There should be a name for the feeling of crying because you laughed so hard.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a name. If there is, would you please let us know on social media?
Yeah.
Because I need to share that with the world.
But also, can I say I feel so honored that I've been a part of a lot of laugh cries in this season.
You make me laugh all the time.
No, but I used to not be able to. There were only two.
You've gotten funnier
in my old age.
Yes.
There are two people. Have been two people. I feel like who you literally would laugh cry with those two people.
Okay, so I want to introduce our incredible conversation we're about to have. Mm-hmm. We had the chance to sit down with one of our preaching heroes, pastor heroes, man of God heroes, who's deeply influenced our lives and ministries. And you can tell in the conversation. I mean, was it too fanboy?
No.
I was geeking out.
No, it was very kind.
Sign my baseball card, like that scene in League of Their Own when she's like to Tom Hanks, like, this is my husband's mint condition baseball card, and he just rips it up and walks away. Yeah, that's not cool.
No, you were honoring it.
Well, he didn't rip up the baseball card.
No. It's also we
were on Zoom, social distancing everybody. But his name's Pastor Jentezen Franklin. He and his wife Cherise have 5 children. They have 4 grandchildren. He's the author of many New York Times best-selling books. They pastor a church called Free Chapel. We get into all that. In this conversation, you're going to hear us talking about parenting and kids and spiritual disciplines and fasting and just so much.
So much. So rich.
And he has so much wealth to offer by way of tips and tricks on walking with Jesus.
You're really going to want to take notes.
Oh my gosh.
Prayers and honestly, you're going to want to have your phone handy to take notes here.
Well, if you're listening to this driving, just be ready to pull over because you're going to want to grab little things. He said something specifically that I plan to immediately work into my prayers for my kids, just like today. Like I'm going to go pray it right now.
Yeah.
Bye. You just hear a door slam and then my car peel out. Why'd you go to your car? You can pray for your kids right here. While you're taking a nap in your heart.
Oh, man.
All right, so I hope you enjoy this conversation with Pastor Jentezen Franklin. Jentezen, it is such a pleasure to have you on our podcast. Thanks for spending some time with us.
I'm honored to be with you. You guys look amazing and look like you're doing well through the pandemic.
My gosh, we're all still standing.
We're here.
Which is saying something.
We still love each other.
You look great as well. You always have great hair. When I think of Pastor Jentezen, I'm like, that guy, first of all, like we'll get to the preaching in a second because that speaks for itself. But the hair.
Oh, please.
What is the secret to your hair? Like, is it 7 bowstrings and we tie you up and you'll lose it? Or...
I think just let it grow out and go with it.
Now, do you blow dry it? I'm talking about like doing it. Is there like a pomade? What's the special trick on your hair?
I put, I don't know, Sharice gets a product. I put some kind of Alveda product or something in it.
Whatever your wife gives you. That's a good rule of thumb.
That's it. And if she wants me to change it, it gets changed. So that's just how that goes. That's how it's always been.
That is. And how many years now married?
33 years.
Oh my gosh.
Years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think I've ever heard the story of how you two met.
Okay. So I was an evangelist and I was preaching a youth camp, and there was a camper that was a part of the youth camp, and her name was Sharice. And we met at the camp, and I had this little rule as a young evangelist, I wouldn't date anybody, if I was preaching at that place. But I got her phone number and I called her back. And next time I passed through Atlanta, which is where she lived, I asked her, to come out and go out. And we went out, and we hit it off pretty good. Been together for 33 years.
Wow.
How long did you guys date for?
We dated for about 8 months, and then I knew she was the one. I knew before that, and we just had I don't know. It's just God put us together, and we've had our ups and downs. It's a challenge. Marriage is not easy. And then we had 5 kids come while we were building the church. Right in the biggest spurt of growth. So the pressure, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had never pastored a church. Free Chapel was the first church I ever pastored. So I was scared to death. My knees weren't knocking. They were missing. And I only had 20 sermons to my name,
Because when you're traveling, you could use your ringers.
Yeah, you just repeat the same thing over and over and over, and you get to be wonderful because you've got every word down. But
right.
Then when you got to preach a brand new message every Sunday, the challenge was enormous. And then we didn't know it when we took Free Chapel to start there. Sharice was pregnant. We didn't know she was pregnant with our first child, Courtney. And then we had children every 2 years for the next 5 years. So
it's good grouping, though. It's a good cluster. You just kind of get it all, bang, 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 get it all done.
Oh my gosh! So how many years married were you when you started, or I guess when you took over Free Chapel?
Right. Well, we had been married. That's a great question. We had been married. We had traveled as evangelists. She traveled with me about a year and a half. And then the church, Free Chapel, called us, which was a church I'd preached at. The pastor had booked me to come preach there a year in advance, and he passed away the Friday night of the week that he booked me.
Oh my
And they
gosh.
asked me to come on in and preach that Sunday, the only pastor they had. So I go in and preach to this, 200 plus attendance church, and it was, they were grieving, they were heartbroken. But while I was there, I felt this uncanny feeling. After I preached that morning, they brought the coffin in and had the funeral right after the service. And it was almost like a passing of the baton. It was like and I knew that something was going on. And they called me the next week or a couple of weeks later and said, would you consider it? And we ended up there, and we've been there a long time.
Wow.
And it's an astounding church. I mean, obviously I saw it backwards. It's almost like whether you see Disney World first or Disneyland. I saw the Orange County property first, which is astounding in its own way. And that God story is remarkable. But so that was what I had in my mind. So then when I finally went to the campus in Georgia, it was like, oh my gosh, the Queen of Sheba, response came out of my mouth. They did not tell me the half, the outdoor amphitheater and the facility and that sanctuary, the worship center that God built. And I've heard you preach enough to know some of the story, the background of the God-sized miracles it took for that building. But just to walk into it, and to step into the result of you and Sharice's and your entire team's faith, just really, really, really remarkable. And to know that came out of such a young marriage. And
right. And when I see you guys, to know that there are beautiful families and couples that are, we're not perfect families. We're not perfect marriages. Our kids go through the same stuff everybody else's kids go through. We go through it in our marriage. We still do. It's still a struggle at times to stay close and to stay in touch and to stay one. And it's something that you have to constantly fight for and constantly be aware of and constantly be alert and staying in touch with your kids and all of that. It's a major priority for us. Yeah. And I learn a lot through Sharice. I notice, like, now that our kids are grown, I have a tendency she calls every one of the kids every day. And I have a tendency, just natural for me, to not necessarily do that, because we have 4 girls and then my son, and then of course their husbands and so on. And it's not that you don't care and love, but it's stuff you have to learn in life that as a man, I need to, if they don't call me, I call them, but keep that communication going, and just little things like that make a family strong. And that's not a problem when your kids are as young as yours are. You don't have any trouble with them.
Well, they're around all the time.
Yeah. Well, and,
just like that.
No doubt.
Treasure those days. Treasure those days.
Gosh. So you're saying fighting for that intentionality and fighting for that connection, because you're so right. Like, for some people, it's easy. Like, oh yeah, I call my mom every Wednesday or every day or whatever. And then for some people, it's like, for me, I feel like I'm more like you, where I have to think about it and be like, oh, I need to actually make this happen or it's not going to happen. But where for Levi, he calls his dad every day. Like, their relationship is so tight and so close. And, but you have to fight for that.
That's
and
right.
How do you fight for connection in your marriage? Like, even after being married 33 years, what does that look like for you guys now?
Sometimes I feel like we have done amazing, and then there's times where something happens, or we get in an argument, or we go through something in the church. You know, some of our worst arguments, I'm just being very honest and open, have been over the church. Yeah. Pastoring the church together. Building programs, budgets, ministry directions, and even people. Like, I'm real trusting. I believe the best usually in people, and I'm real vulnerable in that way. And Sharice has this incredible radar that she can see it coming. And I hate to say it, I hate to admit it publicly, but 99.9% of the time, her discernment is dead on. And I have more than once lived to regret not listening to her concerning people. And sometimes the biggest battles we've had, to be honest, was trying to navigate not only the husband-wife parent dynamic, the pressures of all of that, the growing ministry, but then the times where we disagree on the direction, maybe, or personnel or something like that. It is a challenge. It is. And, you take it home. It doesn't leave you.
Right.
And you have to forgive. It keeps going back to reaching out and, back to the basics of loving one another and getting over it and,
that
moving
does
on.
add a complexity to it, because Jennie and I grew up in a church culture where the pastor's wife really didn't do much. She would, be there at home, and obviously those things are important. But, we kind of had this revelation as we got out, like, ministry is more powerful together, and we'll always be more powerful with our church having a mom and a dad, like a child. Imagine a child just raised by a dad. God help us all, but like to have that imprint and impact in our church and our staff culture of Jennie, it's such a dynamic thing. Now, did you guys grow up in a similar dynamic? Did her involvement ebb and flow as the kids were younger and older? How did that all work for you?
Well, Sharice did not come from like a pastor's home or a ministry background at all. And I was like 3rd generation preacher's kid. So totally different worlds. And she had no interest at all. She was terrified of being up in front of people. She had no interest in leading in those ways when we first started out. Now, interestingly, in the last 8 years, maybe, she has totally shifted and stepped into major leadership in the church. But I would say this, she has always had the gift of details and noticing things, and just a class about her that for buildings and things and, decorations and all of that. And I was always careful. When I realized, at first I put pressure on her when we first got married, I put pressure on her to be the typical pastor's wife kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was always correcting or always doing this, and it caused tremendous tension in our marriage the first years. And then I learned how to behave myself, and I learned to let her be who she was. She didn't have to look like people think pastor's wife always has the look, and all that stuff that just drives you crazy in the ministry if you let it consume your family.
Right.
And when I made that decision, you know, and then she began to just, you know, really fulfill the gifting that she had. She's always been a builder. She literally builds homes. She built every home we've ever lived in. Wow. And she's a very successful builder and, you know, contractor like that and builder. And so those gifts begin to manifest not as the builder, but the details of our buildings and stuff, you know, just it's been amazing how God has used the different giftings of us. But she doesn't like the pulpit, but she loves the other things that she does so well in the ministry. And everybody had much rather hear her speak about family and kids and marriage than me any day, because she gets it. She gets what women go through, you know.
So beautiful.
Well, and you've spoken openly and written openly about challenges with your children on the journey, and children prodigal seasons and difficulties there. And I'm sure not only are there a lot of people listening who can relate to the marriage having fights and challenges, especially in these days where everyone has spent so much time cooped up and there's so much extra friction. Right. And I'm sure for a lot of people, it's almost metal on metal with not a lot of bandwidth. Then you add something like a child who's turned their back on the faith, or a difficulty, any of those things. And it's almost just like, we are at the straw that broke the camel's back and beyond it, you know? So even maybe just, could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's so true. And you do hit those moments and those seasons. It seems like it comes in waves. Everything's going great. And then all of a sudden, it's not just one front you're fighting on, but it's boom, boom from every direction.
Right.
And that's kind of the seasons that we found ourselves in. And there's nothing that is more difficult that I've ever faced in life than parenting children well through particularly those most vulnerable years of, you know, the teenage years and all of the pressure of school and all that kind of stuff. And we did good sometimes, and sometimes I was too strict. Sometimes I probably failed. I know I did. There were things I would do over, but I can tell you this, that through it all, if you keep, you know, your heart right with God, you do the best you can to model and live what you preach, it does get in those kids. They will come back to their senses. They will come back to their faith. And it is worth putting the time in now, because when the tempter comes, and he will come to every family, to every child. We don't look in fear and dread to the future, but we know that God's grace is sufficient. And as we raise them, they will produce that fruit. Every one of them have come back, and they may have said you were strict or this or that, but they say, but thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, we always had something to come back to. We knew it. And the prodigal's advantage is a prodigal always knows the way back home. Wow. And there is a prodigal's advantage, and that's what it is.
Goodness. Sounds like a sermon. Have you done a sermon on prodigal's advantage?
I haven't, but we could.
Let's write it after this talk. We'll finish the podcast, and then we'll sit down and frame it together. And by frame it together, I mean I will listen to you do it, and then I will preach it on Sunday. Yeah. That's what I mean by that. When I mean, just even talking to you, I want to pinch myself, because to me, you're a preacher's preacher. You know, not only are you ministering to people, but I think every preacher I know listens to you and is just in awe of the way you take a text, the revelations that jump out to you. Yeah. You remind me of Charles Spurgeon in the way that you will use a phrase. You'll lift a phrase from the passage and then just go around. It's almost like spinning a diamond around. I realize that's an ironic choice of words, of course, because your newest book is Acres of Diamonds. But but you're not like in a hurry to get onto the next stone. You just want to show that one stone and turn it in the light and let the beauty shine out. I mean, the most impactful sermon I think I've ever heard you preach, beside the bloodstock agent, I think of that one all the time. That sermon about how you did a whole talk on how they breed thoroughbred horses for different attributes. And I mean, it was probably 20 minutes on horses, and this was sired by this one, and this one is blah, blah, Kentucky Derby. And then you connected it to Hebrews 11, and we're connected, all the attributes,
Masterful.
But the one that has impacted my life personally the most is the Scarlet Cord. When you did that talk on Rahab, and it connects, of course, back to the prodigal. Because I've probably listened to that 20 times, and I did my own spin-off version of it that was worse. But that message, Pastor Jentezen, as a parent, because we have 4 daughters and a son as well.
Yeah.
And we now have the hindsight of that comes from having a child in eternity as well. And just the importance for every parent listening, just give a 2-minute version of that principle.
Yeah, that's been a long time, but the thing that I remember about that message specifically was how critical it was to tie that cord. That cord, that it couldn't be loose, that it couldn't be, it had to be, tied there. And as long as they were in that house and under that scarlet cord, which is the blood, of course, and how critical it is to know that our families are under the blood of Jesus Christ. And I don't remember, that's been a while. I'd have to pull the notes.
The thing you kept saying to me, not to me, I
preached on that many times, so I don't know which angle you're coming at.
So you did this, the way you did it, you were talking about how important it is for mom and dads to do what Rahab had to do, to be in the home where the red cord was in the window. And you just kept talking about, like, parents, like, don't let the soccer and this and that and the other become the other most important thing. Get that cord up in the window. Get that cord, nail that cord up in the window. Raise your kids in a home where the blood is over the home. And then the part that gives me chills is that you then began to say this will work generationally, and you kept saying, like, prophetically, like, my grandchildren will be saved. My great-grandchildren will be saved. This blood of Jesus will cover my grandchildren. Wow. And I just feel like there's so many things that pull at your attention. I want to get my kids into a good college. I want my kids to blah, blah, blah. I want them to be a part of this traveling, gymnastics, whatever. And it's like, no, my children will be saved. After that, it's all gravy. And I just feel like that's what's needed right now for parents to remember.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is everything. And it's so true. It's like, I think if we don't get that focus back on faith in our families, and if God is saying anything right now, He's saying that it has to be in our home. It can't just be at church. It can't just be at a Christian school that you take your kids to, or you can't depend on a youth pastor or a children's pastor to take care of the spiritual aspect of your family. That if you don't have it in your home, if you don't, and you don't have to be super spiritual, you don't have to be everything's about Jesus 24 hours a day. But my greatest memories of my family tying that cord would be taking my girls to school in the morning and cutting up with them. And that I was the one that took the kids to school every day of their whole life. And they knew before I would get out that I would speak the blessing over them. I did it since they were just knee high, and I would speak, the Lord bless you and keep you. And they would giggle, but they may be fighting and everything else. But the moment I would start praying that, they would get quiet, they would get reverent. And, that's tying that cord. That's those bedtime stories, at night, or just laying there and talking with your teenager or whatever. And that's tying that cord. That's not preaching at them, not always correcting them, but just listening and then waiting for that right moment to say what they need to hear, to strengthen that and tie that knot a little bit. Because if that cord would have fallen off, what would have happened? So we've got to secure it, and it takes great effort to get that cord established in the house that will make it through the storms that are coming.
Wow, that's so helpful. That's so helpful in the season we're in right now, but thank you so much for sharing that.
Now, you did want to talk, we both have loved your books. Which book of Pastor Jentezen's your favorite, Jennie?
Well, my favorite is the Amazing Discernment of Women.
Oh, wow.
And I know it's an oldie, but it's a goodie. And I think, honestly, it helped me so much, just the beauty and the power of the woman's heart, and even just some of the stories you told about your wife and her discernment, like you said earlier, like she has incredible discernment. And I think so often I kind of downplay or don't feel like I should say things or whatever, but I really felt like it empowered me and encouraged me to be confident in who God made me to be as a woman, and speaking the truth in love, and being aware of how God might be leading me to speak or to act or to do. And honestly, I loved it so much. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, the one of the most amazing things when you think about it is Mary, when Jesus, you know, is about to kick in his miracle ministry at the wedding of Cana, and she was the one that discerned. He still wasn't ready. You know, he still wasn't ready to start things. And I know that I'm on theological thin ice, but I know he was God. But also, it's very evident that he was like, why are you troubling me? Why are you telling me? And she just says, whatever he tells you to do it. He's going to do something here. And she triggered, you know, his whole ministry. It was her discernment that said, this is the moment where it starts. Wow. This is where the miracles begin. If you read that story, it's very evident.
He seems very reluctant. Yeah.
He didn't want to do it. Yeah. He wasn't going to do it. He would have walked off. And that's why women have to understand, especially with their children, what they can activate. Wow. The giftings that they can release through their children. Wow. I'll speak for me in the times when I've been, you know, we went through a thing one time where our church almost went through a split. I had a guy, you know, that just went kind of rogue on me and decided to start another church and all that kind of stuff out of our church. Gosh. And to make a long story short, it ended up coming to nothing. But in that moment, you know, I was shaken, and that's when Charisse she could just say something, and I feel like I could go whip a pack of lions when she gets through with me. You know, I get down, and it's amazing how women can come, our wives can come and speak, and it just so like, you don't know who you are. You don't know, and it builds you up in such a way. And I think that's what God wants out of our homes. If we can build each other up more and love each other, and all we got is each other. We need to stand together.
That is profound, and I think a lot of women listening to that need to know that. Yeah. Because what's true in the positive can also be doubly true in the negative. Yeah. One statement from the wife can make a man feel emasculated and feel no man wants to try to fight a battle he doesn't think he can win. But it's like that when Jennie is encouraging me, it doesn't matter if the world's against me. I can do it, like you said. And I think, you know, there's maybe a lot of women who are like, well, my husband's no man of God like you, Pastor Jensen. But it's like, what could he become if you would just begin to be his cheerleader?
Ooh, so good.
And if you would get on his side.
And after we preach, Levi, think about this. I mean, I'm the most pitiful thing, especially if I'm not sure I preached a good sermon. I'm like, I get in the car. Sometimes I can remember getting in the car, especially when all of us were in one car. And it's like, I just came out of the service, and I was so desperate to hear that was a good sermon or good job or praise, you know, anything. Yeah. And it's like everything's going on in that car. Did we even come out of a church service? And I guess what I'm trying to say is that compliment sometimes from Charisse, when Charisse would say to me that was a word from God or whatever, she didn't have to say a lot. But what it did to me in confidence, because a lot of preaching is about confidence. If you don't have boldness and confidence in what you're sharing, it's hard. It's hard to communicate what you need to say. And boy, I've learned that when she says something like, you know, that's a word or that's a good message, that to me, really, I take note of that. I've learned because she has that kind of discernment. I don't know if that makes sense, but it really builds you have no idea your words more than any. If it's great that Levi called me and said, that's a great sermon. But when my wife says it, or one of my kids, you know, comes up and says, Dad, wow.
Yeah.
You know, that's the greatest, isn't it? That's the greatest.
It is. It's so
And
true.
your daughters, and I mean, all your kids are amazing, but Connor, especially your youngest daughter, she, you know, just really only being around Olivia, my oldest, who's 14, a few times, has just really taken a shine to her and encouraged her, been intentional about texting her, sent her flowers on her birthday. I mean, just and you do something for me. That's one thing. You do something for my daughter. You know what I mean? It's just it's so I just really appreciate that, and that's you guys' faith again rising up, and it's so humbling to watch, so encouraging to watch, and just beautiful to see that happen.
Well, you just said something powerful too. To if there's pastors and people in ministry out there listening, one of the greatest things you can do. I did learn this through raising teenagers. One of the greatest things you can do is not just have you guys speaking into your kids' life, but you do need to have some other minister that they connect to, that can they can say things to them, and it's the most amazing thing. It's stuff you've been saying over and over. They wouldn't hear it from you. Right. They had a filter on your voice. But if there's another minister that they love and respect, so get your kids around another minister. Yeah. Make sure, and like you said, I felt the same way. If you pay attention to my kids, I appreciate you showing me honor. But that's what you guys, I love the way you're doing ministry. I love the way you're doing life. You're just real. I've said this publicly. I've said it privately. I'll say it publicly. I have the highest esteem for you guys because what you preach is the pure gospel, Levi, both of you. It's not just whipped cream gospel that feel good stuff, but it's real life, and you preach the truth and you live the truth. And there's something about when you get your kids around and they have another voice that they can go to, especially if they're preachers' kids, that is a spiritual voice that will be so valuable down the road as they go through different crises.
Wow.
Thank you for those kind words. Yes. It means, and it's your investment, even before we met, and I think that's so important too, that people to hear, like, you don't have to have a personal relationship with someone to learn from them.
Right.
And I never tried to make doors open or, manipulate getting into a back room. I just received from your ministry for years. Mm-hmm. And then God, who raises up one and, gives opportunity, saw fit to connect our paths. But I was learning from you far before I ever had your phone number or got to sit down at a restaurant with you. And so it's again, the investment of the fathers, into sons.
Yeah. The truly humbling thing about that to me is that, the thing I look for in ministry more than just talent and things like that and charisma, whatever, is the right spirit. You guys have the right spirit. There's something about this. I have an old sermon I used to preach called Spirits Make Men. I don't know if you've ever heard it. You should pull it out.
Ooh, yeah.
But it's called Spirits Make Men. Talent doesn't make men. Gifting doesn't make men. The longer I stay in ministry, the longer Paul stayed in ministry, the smaller he became in his own eyes because he had that spirit. He started out, chief of the apostles. He ends up being least of the brethren. That's his own definition of himself.
Wow.
And it's spirits that make men. Why did he choose the 12? Was it talent? They were fishermen. They had BO. They had, come on. He saw what other people didn't see. I can teach you how to talk. I can teach you how to preach. I can teach you how to communicate. But if you don't have that pure spirit that is after God, not perfect, but truly, let the words of my mouth and my spirit be pure. Yeah. Let my spirit be pure. And spirits make men, and that's what makes you guys so powerful.
Geez, I want to hear that one. Yes. I also really want to hear, someone on your staff told me you have a sermon about Levi's jeans. And
that's true.
I feel like I need to hear a sermon.
Yeah, you do.
So I've Googled it. I have looked.
You need to take that.
Jensen,
yes.
the internet doesn't have it. The internet doesn't have that sermon. Someone on your team told me, I think it was Tracy, he said, yeah, Pastor Jensen's got a sermon about Levi's jeans. And I was like, well, I'm finding it. And I'm pretty good at Googling. I have not been able to find it. So if you find the sermon notes for it.
I will find it I will find it. I will send it to you, and it would be the greatest to hear your spin on it. You would take it and really do something great with it.
Wow!
But I actually got an old pair of jeans, and I talked about the different kinds of jeans, and I went into Levi's jeans. You know, one of the sons of Jacob.
Dang,
and it's really you'll like it because it's family. It's about passing down.
I will like it because it's you, and because it's awesome, and because it has the word Levi in it. When we started the church, one of the big jokes that people say, well, what do you want this church to be like? It was 15 years ago. And one of the things I always used to say is, well, I want to put the Bible in blue jeans. You know, I want it to be accessible. Every man can hear him gladly, kind of a thing. So I feel like I definitely need to hear that.
Yeah, you do.
I think you should take that and make it into your next book or something.
Come on now.
Ooh.
Come on. I love it.
Sponsored by Levis.
So shifting gears, because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. But one thing that I want people to hear, I told Jennie driving in, I said, I want Pastor Jentezen, because I feel like in this time, just like the spirits make men, what we need in this season and in every season, I think, actually, let me put it this way. I feel like in this season, what's being exposed is a lack of devotional depth that is in the Christian culture today. That's all about flash and sizzle at times, and people church hop. And I go to this church, like your staff member who split and did this, and it came to naught. Which it seems like those kind of things always come to naught. Just like a marriage based on adultery was going to have a rough time because the foundation you're building something on is everything, right? So anyhow, what I was saying to Jennie in the car is I want Pastor Jentezen to talk to our Hey It's Luskos audience about your devotional life, because not only are you the only person I know that carries a pocket knife when you're having your prayer time, because that is very interesting, but I feel like you could help some people maybe who don't have a depth in their relationship with Jesus that's causing them to be freaking out 10 more times more than they should be, and just to help people with that intimacy with Jesus.
Yeah, the key to it is the daily routine, isn't it? I mean, after all that is said and done, you can improve. If you're really thirsty, you can improve on water.
Gosh,
you just can't improve on water. Wow. When you after you've really worked out. I'm a runner. After I've run 4 miles or 5 miles in the hot, I don't want sweet tea. I don't want a Coke. I don't want coffee. I want water. Wow. And the word and that time of just read it. Just read it. Just read it. Just read the book. Just read an old man, old mentor of mine who's now gone on to be with the Lord, Bishop T.F. Tenney. He told me that every day of his life, he said, there are times when I was so busy, but he said, I made myself read the word. And he said, it may have been 5 sentences, but I read it because, and then there were times when he would sit down and he said, I would do nothing on a day, but pick a book of the Bible and read the whole book of the Bible in one setting. And he said what that did when he didn't have the time is it's just something about it that keeps you fresh. So I would encourage preachers, man, read the Bible.
Yes.
Read it for more than getting a sermon. Read it so that God can read you. If you'll read the Bible will read you.
Beautiful.
And then, the prayer thing is so important. Now, it's changed as my schedule and things have changed. But I had a place of prayer that I used to do in Georgia more. But now you
got to tell about that, because obviously people are going, what the heck with a pocket knife? Explain that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, there's a place where I go pray when I'm in Georgia that is in the woods. I like to walk through the woods and pray. And it's been my prayer trails for 30 years. And the Lord, one time we were going through one of the greatest trials with one of our kids and this and that. And I was just so burdened, and I was just walking through those woods, and I just started weeping. I just felt like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. I'd never faced anything like it. I didn't know, as a dad, as a man, as a leader, I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. And I was just talking to God out of my heart, walking through those woods. And I'd learned to take a knife, just a little knife with me just in case, because you never know what you'll run into out there.
Some angry badger.
Yeah, but I made the decision to do it on purpose, because I started marking trees. I don't know why I started doing it, but I would cut trees, and I can to this day go to those trails, and I can show you the marks in those trees. that if I look at them, I get emotional, because I remember when hell was laughing at me saying, this is going to happen and that's going to happen and you're not going to make it through this one. And I got your kid this time and it just goes on and online. But I have that mark to remember that after each of those victories came, I would make a mark on that tree to remind myself of God's faithfulness. And I can walk all through those trails and the major trials of about 5 or 6 that I've gone through, there's those marks on those trees that'll be there as long as those trees live. And it's just reminding yourself of the faithfulness of God.
Yes.
And, having those landmarks that if he did it then, he'll do it again.
Oh, amen. So powerful.
The trees have marks. I mean, it's just like that. I feel like I could see that on a book cover as well, by the way. I mean, if the trees could talk, right? Right?
Mark the trees.
Mark the trees. And so now, obviously, some people listening to this are like, okay, that doesn't help me. I live in downtown Seattle. I can't go cut trees. I'll get arrested if I start cutting dumpsters or buildings, But you're saying the principle is have a daily time to meet with Jesus, and don't let heaven not hear your voice crying out to him.
Yeah, and feed your spirit, just feed everything I know. I appreciate what you said about me being a preacher and all that. I don't see myself as a great preacher at all. I everything I know I learned from somebody else. I'm not some great original preacher. Everything I heard your message at Forward Conference when you preached. In my opinion, the greatest message I've ever heard to young people about sexuality, about morality, and not in coming in a way and in a direction that just was so perfect for this generation. Yeah. And so when I hear stuff like that, I pick up from everybody. I learn from everybody. And the greatest thing that I've learned is if I prepare my heart and keep my spirit right, that the least of my worries will be the preaching side of stuff. You just accumulate material and all of that. But the key to it, I believe, is just to keep your spirit right where it needs to be. And when I talk about spirits make men, I just remembered something. I'll stop. I don't mean to ramble here, but the thing that text that I use in that is from 2 Kings. I believe it's the 3rd chapter, and it's where it said that Elisha poured water on the hands of the prophet, Elijah. All he ever did. You remember that the king said, "Is there not any man of God?" And they said, "Well, there is this old prophet," and all he ever did was pour water on Elijah's hands. He's nothing but a glorified water boy. But it was that spirit, the spirit of being humble enough that if you can't pour water on somebody else's, be a servant, then you'll never part the water.
Gosh.
And you'll never get the double portion. And it's the spirit that God looks for, of being humble to pour water before you can part the water of the Jordan and do the magnificent double miracle ministry that Elisha was given. Did not start with raising the dead, making axe heads swim. It started with pouring the water. It was that spirit.
Gosh.
It was that spirit.
Wow.
All right. So let's talk about
that's why the prophets, the schools of the prophet, the young guys said, the spirit of Elijah does rest on Elisha. It wasn't the Holy Spirit. It was that same spirit of servitude.
Wow.
And because it's spirits that make men.
God.
So back to a minute ago when he said, "I'm not a great preacher." That's like Steph Curry saying, "And I don't even know how to play basketball." Yeah, it's like, "Oh, what's this? Does this go in the hoop? I'm not even sure."
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. And I feel like it applies to everybody, because maybe not some listening is not like, "Oh, I'm not going to be a preacher," but it's like the mom you want to be, the CEO you want to be, the inventor you want to be. It starts with your spirit. It starts with your heart. It starts with the small things.
Well, and part of that spirit is fasting. And I just want to say thank you for how you've led the way for us personally in our home, but also as a church in fasting and praying. And honestly, your book, Fasting, has also been one of my personal favorites.
We've recommended it to our whole staff, our church. Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
I think when you say that it's a threefold part of what it means to be a believer. When you give, when you pray, when you fast, you have to have all those three. And the Bible is assuming that when you're a believer, you're doing those three things. And so I just want to tell you personally, thank you so much for how you have sown into our hearts the importance of fasting. And even we've started the 21-day Daniel fast as a church, and it's just been life-changing.
I can't imagine how hard 2020 would be without the knowledge that that's how our year began.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just remembering that. That's how we began this year. We started by asking God to move in power, and we looked to him for strength. So we have the strength now that we need for this because we asked him for it then.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And it is one of those, when Elisha, the Bible tells that story of that they took the soldier that died and they threw his corpse into the cave where Elisha's bones were. And when the new generation touched the old bones, life came to the new generation. I have another old sermon I used to preach called Touching the Old Bones.
Gosh.
And one of the old bones that needs to be touched in this generation is the bone of fasting and prayer.
Yes.
Because it brings life to a new generation. It brings consecration and discipline to a new generation.
Yes.
And there's old bones that are foundational, that have to be revisited and retouched by new generations.
Jentezen, what has helped you fast not fasting, in prayer? Do you pray out loud? Is there tips, tricks? Is there when you open your mouth to pray? I think a lot of people could relate to the idea of I know to pray for people. I know to pray for myself. I know to pray maybe the Lord's Prayer. But what are some of the things that you are go-to things for you in prayer?
There are certain prayers that I try to pray every day. I do pray the Lord's Prayer, if not mentally. I do it a lot of times over the food. It's so inclusive. It covers every aspect of your life.
Yes.
Dr. Mark Rutland wrote an amazing book, and he said that it was like 30 seconds it takes you to do that prayer. And he encouraged our church to just pray it at meals and stuff. And that's always stuck with me. So a lot of times when I just bow my head, I'll just go through that. And it just gives me peace to know I just covered my whole day. And I always pray the prayer of Jabez a lot. I don't know if you guys have ever done that, but that book impacted me. Dave Wilkerson, I believe, David Wilkerson. And he wrote the prayer of Jabez. And, that's a fourfold prayer that is magnificent to pray. I've been praying it for years.
Pray it now in case people have never heard it.
Okay. He said, Jabez prayed 4 prayer requests, and the Bible said God granted him his request. And the first thing he said is, bless me indeed. And the word indeed means in the superlative. So I'm not asking to be normal. I'm not asking to be an average pastor. I'm not asking to be an average business person or whatever, or parent or husband. But bless me in the superlative. Bless me indeed.
Wow.
Bless me. I want a big one. I'm asking big. All right. And then he said, enlarge my territory. That's greater influence. If you want to just sum it up, I'm asking you for greater. I've prayed that prayer almost every day of my life verbally. Give me greater influence, not for me, but for your name's sake.
Yes.
Give me greater influence. And then he said that your hand would be upon me. And I say it like this. The tender touch of God would be on me.
Wow.
The tender touch of God would be on my children. The tender touch of God when my kids go off to college. There is an unseen hand, the hand of the Lord. As they go back to school, the tender touch of God, protecting hand of God. And lastly, keep me from evil. Because I don't want to mess up. I don't want to bring shame to my family, my wife, my marriage, my ministry, God's name.
Yeah.
So keep me from evil. Keep me from the wrong people. Keep me from the wrong places. I don't just want to. I want to stay out of it. It's better to not have to be delivered. And so keep me from evil.
Yes.
And then I ask, in conclusion, I ask 3 things every day too. I ask God for wisdom. I ask him for favor. And I ask him for the anointing every day of my life. I specifically, and when I'm going into an important meeting or whatever, I'll say, God, give me wisdom, give me favor. Favor is so important. Favor is so important. And the anointing.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's so helpful.
Remarkable.
So beautiful.
Well, I hope everybody will get this new book, Acres of Diamonds. The message, you've preached it at Fresh Life. It blessed our church, but it blessed our family. We had a family vacation when that weekend came and you preached for us. And of course, when you preached it, you were in an empty studio and we were showing it to the broadcast, and we encouraged people like, hey, just because you can't get together with big groups, get any small group you can together to watch it. And it was such an honor because my dad has been bigly, in a large way, impacted by your ministry as well, loves your preaching. And so to be there with my father and my family and watching, you minister this message to us, it was a holy moment.
Yeah.
And everybody was impacted by it. And so I just thank you for so many things.
Yes.
Thank you. We love you guys.
And I hope everybody listening will get Acres of Diamonds and listen to A Kingdom Connection. Check out the messages from Free Chapel. And Jentezen, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a tremendous honor. I love you guys so much. Appreciate you very much.